Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Investing with Confidence. I am your host, Joshua David, and we are happy to have you with us today. An online trading academy, the sponsor of the show, on their 25th year, teaching people just like you how to invest in the stock market, also other markets, options, futures, forex, and making better and smarter investing decisions within your short-term income accounts, but also your long-term investment accounts. And that's some of the things that we're going to talk about here today on Investing with Confidence, Al, is how we can make smarter investing decisions within all of our accounts. Right. Not just long-term investment accounts, but also trading strategies and income strategies that are used within these financial markets. And we can't start the show off without a kickoff here. How are you doing?
You know what? I am doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm doing really good. I have a good time doing the show here, and we had some. It's like a broken record lately. It's some wild moves again in the stock market. As we know, we had some big drops, some big gains, and last week we actually talked about a supply zone right around the 45.59 area to roughly about 46.10, and it's really respecting that supply zone. And that's a term that we're going to talk a little bit about here, as well as supply and demand, how the financial markets actually function. Before we get into that, Al, what is your perspective on this market? We've seen some great moves, some great volatility, great opportunities within the stock market.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really work on with our students is helping them to kind of change their mindset and look at volatility as a friend. That's something that can be used significantly to your benefit. But let's talk a little bit about what's happening with these markets now, why we're seeing such great fluctuations. For a long time, we've seen kind of a tug-of-war between different things that are tugging the market up, tugging it back down again. Yeah. And for a long time, it was COVID and then the potential for increased interest rates. Now it's primarily Russia, what they're going to do with Ukraine or in Ukraine, and also interest rates. What's the Fed's going to do? What is the Fed going to do? And, and a lot depends on what Putin does over the next few weeks. Is he going to withdraw troops? Is he going to invade? Depending on what he does, that's going to have a huge impact on the market. We know that the Fed is going to raise interest rates. We know we have inflation, so that's something to deal with. A lot of people are concerned about that R word, which stands for recession. Are we going to go into recession? And what is that? It's a period of economic contraction where businesses begin to lose money, and then to cut costs, they start to lay off people, and less money goes into the economy. However, we are also in earnings season, so earnings is having a big impact on stocks. So we're going to talk about a couple of them, I think, here in a while. But also retail sales. On Wednesday, retail sales came out. Economists were looking at a 2.5% jump. It went up 3.8%, so significantly higher.
And how did the market react to that, though?
Well, you know what? People might be thinking, sales went up, and we know that what is the big driver of GDP is the consumer spending. So consumer spending went up. Why did the market go down? Well, this is one of those good news is bad news is good news things because of the increased spending. And you started out by talking about supply and demand.
Exactly.
Here's a good example of how supply and demand works. There's obviously more demand by the consumer for spending, but there's less supply because of the supply chain issues, because of the lack of workers. There is less supply. So we're seeing prices go up. The reason the market went down is that people are looking at this situation as causing more inflation. As inflation goes up, maybe the Fed has to raise interest rates quicker or more often or higher. So those are things that are impacting the market right now. And our mantra always is it really doesn't matter what's happening as long as you can identify where the big players, where the institutions are trading, and what are they telling us, and how can we identify what they're telling us and where they're telling us to. They're basically telling us where to act.
So with supply and demand, though, that came out a couple times. What does that really mean, though?
Yeah.
Let's talk about demand real quick.
Okay. Well, look at supply and demand. That is an economic law that really can't be argued. It is factual. When there's more demand for something, price goes up. When there's more supply, price goes down. In the financial world, in the financial markets, look at demand as being buyers and supply as being sellers. What our strategy, our investment, our core foundational investment strategy called CORE, what it does is it uses that concept of supply and demand, and it identifies where buyers are. Now, in order to move the market, I mean, you and I, Josh, we could go out and buy the same stock today. Mm-hmm. We're not going to move the market because we don't have enough clout to do that.
I mean, capital. It takes billions and sometimes trillions of dollars to do that.
Well, hey, look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett at one time took a position in IBM stock, $10.7 billion, 64 million shares. That's a lot. That's a lot of shares, a lot of dollars. That moves the price of something. So it's the institutions, the big players, the hedge funds, people that have hundreds of millions or billions or trillions of dollars to put into the market and then also take out of the market. That's what's driving price. And when you think about it, why are you in the market? What are you looking at the markets providing for you? And I think most people would say a profit, financial security. But if you are going to take a position in anything, whether it's a stock or an options position or a futures contract or a Forex contract, if you're taking a position, you want the price to go a certain direction. If you are long, in other words, if you're buying it, you want the price to go up. What makes the price go up? It's these institutional buyers. So being able to identify where they are on a price chart, which is what we teach you, that's really critical. And the same thing, when they're exiting a position and they have millions of sell orders, you don't want to still be holding after that point. So identifying where the sell orders are also becomes critical.
Yeah, and just a real life example of that is I think everybody has seen an auctioneer. Now, we were talking about auctioneers yesterday and how they do things. And
are you gonna do the auctioneer's call?
I will not do the auctioneer call today, but everybody knows when you have one item for sale, let's just say a cell phone, and you have 20 people bidding on it, that auctioneer is going to raise that price until there's one bidder for that one phone. And on the flip side, if there's only one phone and nobody's bidding, the auctioneer is going to drop that price. And the markets are very similar. And now, as Al was talking about, when there's more demand, which is buyers, price has to go up. More supply, which is sellers, price has to go down. And the key is to identify that on a price chart with a core strategy, right. As Al was talking about, that Online Trading Academy the sponsor has, which is designed to follow the big institutions, to follow the big money and trade like them and not against them. And now you actually teach investing classes here in Bloomington to go over that strategy,
right.
What it actually is, how supply and demand works in the financial markets, and a kind of a visual of how that works, because we're visual learners as adults. We have to see how that's done, and then you have to do it. It's a skill that you got to build. So I want to give away 20 tickets for callers 1 through 10 for this investing class right here in Bloomington. Call 888-682-6466. That's 888-682-6466. You can also text the word INVEST to the number 484848 for 2 tickets. Al, coming up next, I want to talk about those stocks you were mentioning. We're going to get into Airbnb. We're going to talk about Roblox again. We talked about that last week. Big moves, nice moves in the markets coming up next. We'll be right back.